What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So if you guys missed the last video, it's a must see. You guys got to go check it out. We completely cut out just about 90% of the rust out of this Land Cruiser. We custom fabbed rocker panels, quarter panels, a bunch of different patches and mounts and this and that. Got this thing looking sweet. So that was a lot of work. That took like 2 weeks to do. I'm hoping this one is going to be a little easier. Take a little break from the real hard work. So we got to build some fenders. I am going to, first things first, I'm going to try to use the factory fenders, and obviously they're not going to fit with the tire. With the articulation this thing has, the tire was hitting the fender quite severely. So what we're going to do is try to raise the fenders. Now these fenders are quite a bit different than, you know, your average fender. They got this piece here that goes along the hood, and then that bolts on to the fender. We can probably get about 2.5 inches if we cut this thing up. So that's what I'm gonna try. I've seen other people do it where you basically cut this thing in half and shorten it up and then weld it back together so that the fender is moved up kind of towards the hood line. The only problem is it's going to be a little bit tricky because we have to keep the same angle on the back. Actually, that's the front. On the back, we have to basically move the fender up and forward because that whole back is angled down. So if we moved it straight up, then we would have to basically cut this way up. On that side, it would cause problems with the heater box and everything. So we're going to basically try to move the fender up and forward, and to do that, we got some calculations to do to make sure our cuts are correct on there so that everything lines back up. And then obviously once we do that, we move it forward. The fender is going to be sticking over the front of the grill. Now I've seen them with that hanging over, and I haven't decided if I like the look. I'm going to get it all together. If I like the look of it hanging out, like I said, it'll basically move the fender forward and up about 2.5 inches. So we'll have 2.5 inches sticking out of that fender over the front. I guess we'll just see if I do shorten it up. We'll have to, chop the fender. I'll have to see, but either here or here, just to shorten that up a little bit. I don't know. We got a lot of work to do, but we also need to get this thing on the lift and flex it out so that we can make sure that we're even going to have enough room once we cut these fenders up, just to make sure we don't put these things together and they still rub. So that being said, let's get the front core support, like radiator mount on, get these on, and then kind of mock up our fenders and see what we need to do to get them to clear the tires on articulation. Well, I think we can make this work. We got about 2.5 inches of shock shaft showing. That means that shock will be able to raise obviously 2.5 more inches. The tire's gonna move more than that. If I can move this fender up 3 inches and forward 3 inches, it's going to obviously not be hitting here anymore because this is gonna be out here, so it's going to be on the front of the tire more. There's a little bit of a gap here, but I think we can make this work. One thing I have thought about doing as well that would gain some clearance, and I think would look a little bit better as well, is we can move the fender in maybe an inch, inch and a half, maybe 2 inches. It'd be very easy to do. All we have to do is trim this front right here and then just drill new holes. It's kind of hard to see under there, but basically this fender just bolts on to this. So we could just drill new holes in this fender, scoot the whole thing in a little bit, and I don't know, I think that would work. I think we can make it clear. Obviously I haven't turned it yet. The jack is kind of in the way. I guess we could get somewhat of an idea here. Okay, so that actually is gonna need some more because you can see it did raise this fender up, but like I said, moving this fender forward is going to help this. So the game plan, I'm going to basically cut this here and here, and I'm going to raise up this, and then we'll bolt this back onto that. We'll weld those two together. So basically this fender is going to be right at that hood line, and that, like I said, we'll move it up and forward, and then we'll have to figure out if we don't like that overhang off the front, we'll have to shorten something up here, which is going to move this back into the tire. I don't know, not really sure what we're doing, but let's get cutting and see if we can make this thing clear. Well guys, we are so close, so close. I mean, literally we are just barely touching. I haven't decided yet if I like or I don't like this fender hanging out the front. I mean, factory it is hanging out a little bit, but that might be a little bit excessive. But other than that, it looks really good. This back obviously isn't bolted on yet, so it's going to change a little bit. But what I do think I want to do, like I said, is move. I'm not going to angle it. I just want to move the entire fender in. I don't know. I think it'll look better. It'll be super simple. I just have to trim this area here for where it's connecting to the core support. And then, well, actually I'll trim the whole front off and then trim the whole back on the inside so we got clearance, and then I just got to drill new holes to mount it. And I think, I don't know, I think moving that in maybe 2 inches, maybe 1.5 inches, I think that'll, for one, it'll give us a little bit more clearance for the tire, and then I think it'll look a lot better too. Well, that's it right there. We went 2 inches in with the fender. I think it looks a lot better, and we clear everywhere. I mean, once we bolt that on back there, you can see it's about 1/4 inch to the fender. The front is just barely rubbing, so I'm not worried about that. Well guys, that is sitting on its own weight. You can see we're off the lift, and that is close to ride height. I think the front is gonna be a little bit lower. The rear is right about ride height. So honestly, I really like the look of these fenders. As far as the gap on the front, I think I'm gonna leave it. I don't wanna pull that back because this is a spot, like I said, where it's rubbing. And if I were to pull that back up, it would be hitting really bad. And I'd have to chop that whole corner off. So I think, I don't know, there's gotta be maybe something I could put here, maybe a little pod light, or maybe just a bracket down to here. I don't know, just to fill that gap in. But I don't think it looks, I mean, I don't know. I don't love it, but I think it's gonna look a lot better than our other option. Well, you guys are probably laughing at me at this point. You know, sometimes I don't think, I'm in the zone and my brain just kind of turns off. So if we cut 3 inches out of here and we move this back, it's not just going to move it straight back like I was thinking. I mean, I wasn't thinking. It'll move it up and it'll move it away from the tire. I mean, it's not going to move it 3 inches. It might move it 1 inch, but even if we get another inch of clearance up, when this moves back and up, I think it'll still clear just fine. So I think that's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna cut maybe find the straightest spot of this and cut about 3 inches out. Other than that, we got some rust to cut out. So you can see where there's a brace underneath that traps a lot of dirt and moisture, and it always rusts these fenders out. So we're gonna cut a strip out of here, replace that. This one isn't as bad, but I know we're gonna have to replace that anyway. So I tried drilling these spot welds out, and I mean, this is a super thick piece. I wasn't really able to, I got one, but that one I broke 2 spot weld cutters on. So what I'm gonna do, since I'm already cutting this out, I'm just gonna cut around the outside of it, and then we'll use that for our patch. Now that is perfect. We're at full stuff and full turn, and it is, I mean, barely rubbing. I'm not worried about that one bit. This is also pretty close here. You can see steering box is just barely touching, but we are clearing. I'm absolutely stoked with it. The blinker here, the factory blinker is not going to work anymore, so I'm probably going to fill those holes in. You can see I'm not able to get that on, so I'm going to fill those holes in, and I don't know, maybe I've used those little tiny rock lights before. Maybe I'll put a little rock light here or here or somewhere, just a little smaller, like a flush mount blinker. I think it'll work just fine. I mean, I do like the 70s look with these big blinkers, but I think I'm gonna change it up and do little flush mounts. Well, we got another great opportunity to give this slip roller another shot. So you guys know, if you watched the last video, we built the quarter panels with this thing. Now we need to just make a slight bend down with this patch to follow the contour of this fender. So we're gonna use this slip roller. It's just gonna make this job a breeze. It's gonna take a couple minutes, and it's gonna look so much better than if we were to try to do this by hand with a hammer or something. You just have creases all over it. This is gonna give us just a nice smooth bend. Now, if you guys are unfamiliar with Weaver, they are actually a new sponsor of the channel. Now, they have an amazing selection of tools. I've been buying their tools ever since I started doing this kind of work. So their tools have an amazing price tag. You really can't beat the bang for the buck with Weaver. So what we have here is called oil canning. It's where you weld in your patch and the weld shrinks, and all the metal surrounding your patch is basically has nowhere to go because everything inside of that has shrunk. So it creates this pop can, oil can situation where there's just too much metal there. So instead of trying to shrink the metal that's like oil canning, what we're gonna try to do is stretch back out the welds that shrunk. So we're gonna grind these down, and then we're gonna use a dolly and hammer to just beat the crap out of the weld area. Now, these MIG welds aren't as strong as like a TIG weld. They don't have the flex really, so sometimes they can crack. So we'll have to inspect that to make sure it doesn't crack. But we want to use the dolly and hammer method to try to stretch this metal back out where it has shrunk, so that way our fender is straight again. Well, I'm sure on the video it looked like straightening this fender was just a walk in the park. That is not the case in reality. This thing took probably 6 hours, maybe even more, into just straightening this fender from the patch we welded in, the insane oil canning that this thing had. Now, I was a little bit skeptical on just the hammer dolly method at stretching those welds back out, but after a bunch of pounding and beating this thing, it actually tightened up. Now I'm gonna try something a little bit different on this other patch, and I'm gonna try to reduce the oil canning or the pop can that is happening here. So they say, I've never tried this, but they say a TIG weld is so much easier to move. It's a little bit softer, I guess, and it's obviously there's not going to be nearly as much to grind down. The weld itself is going to take a lot longer, but I think after the weld is done, the end process is going to be so much quicker. So I'm going to try it out on this fender, on this patch, and I'm also going to clamp some flat plate along the edge of that fender, just because there's no edge on that fender. It's just a straight thin piece of sheet metal that is super easy to warp. So with TIG welding and clamping it, I think we're going to be able to reduce the amount of time we got to screw around with this fender to straighten it back out after welding. Well guys, that's it. We got these fenders actually pretty decently straight. I don't know if you remember this part right here. It was completely mangled. That doesn't look too bad. It's gonna need, like I said, a little bit of filler there, a little bit up here, but other than that, I mean, these things turned out sweet. I love the look of them, and the most important thing, they clear on articulation, full lock, full stuff, everything clears. So I'm happy with it. As far as hood latches go, these are the factory latches. Obviously, they're not going to work their way. I mean, I'm not going to be able to put the catch down here. And actually what I ended up doing, I haven't got them yet, but I bought some Jeep, like JKU, or I don't know, Wrangler, I guess, latches, aftermarket style latches, some aluminum ones that should fit right here. There should be just enough room to get that right there. I'll show you guys that once I get those in, but we are looking good on fenders. Like I said, once we start our body work on getting this thing ready for paint, we're gonna go through. I got some of these dents out. Some of them, I don't know, I wasn't able to get, so we might beat those around a little bit more. You can see that one right there. I could probably get that one quite a bit better if I spent some time on it. So we still are gonna have some work to do on body work wise. Honestly, the hood isn't too bad. You can see right here, it's kind of creased on both sides. I think that's from when it flips up and hits the roof. I don't know, I might do something about that so it doesn't continue to happen, but I think these are for the windshield, because you can take the roof off, you can fold the windshield down, and it rests on these, and then you clip it onto that. I don't know, I'll probably leave those on just because, but other than that, I mean, this thing is, doors are straight, the roof is straight. We are gonna have to pull that roof cap off. That is fiberglass, and I'll just jump up here. This is fiberglass, and then there's a steel like outer trim or drip edge that, I don't know, it doesn't look bad on the sides, but definitely the front's gonna have to be replaced. And then I don't know how to fix that. This fiberglass is completely cracked up. If you guys are familiar, I've never really done fiberglass work. What would you do if you guys are familiar with this cracking? I mean, what I'm thinking is just overlaying the entire front. I might have to cut this out or somehow straighten that back out and just reinforce this entire front like foot, fill in all these cracks with, you know, another couple layers of fiberglass. So if you guys got any ideas for fixing this cap up, let me know. Drop a comment down below. Well guys, that's a wrap for this one. The next video, I'm kind of gonna take a step away from bodywork. I want to jump on the inside. So I got some really cool plans. Hopefully everything works out as I'm planning, but we got some really cool plans for the inside of this thing. Next video is gonna be very exciting if everything goes as planned. Well guys, I'm gonna wrap this one up here. Why don't you go smash that thumbs up button, comment, subscribe. We'll catch you in the next one.